Mr. Chairman, while waiting,
Senator
just a brief comment is, like many of you, I've heard from fire chiefs, fire departments across my state about the importance of getting this done swiftly. I think I've heard a number of potential amendments, some of which I think make good sense. Senator Paul and I have worked together to try to ensure there's transparency around questions about the origins of COVID. I think that there's some suggestions about even some immigration-related policy that's been proposed to attach to this. From a governance standpoint, folks stand to die or be grievously injured by fire, immense property damage. If we use this as a vehicle for a bunch of unrelated policy and it gets referred to a bunch of other committees in the House, then we're not going to get this through the process expeditiously, and that could put our constituents at risk. So my inclination here is that, and I just would humbly submit this to my colleagues, we should just get this done. I'm always ready to work with my Republican colleagues on matters of common interest where there's good policy to do, but lives in Georgia and in all of our states hang in the balance while these grants aren't moving, and so I hope we can just move this through the process and work together on other matters through the appropriate vehicle. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I appreciate it, Senator Ossoff. And I just want to remind all the members again, the bill before us without amendments is the exact bill that we passed unanimously out of this committee last year because of the urgency you mentioned. Senator Sinema?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just want to note that I feel like we've gotten off to a bit of a rocky start with the committee this year, and I've really enjoyed serving on this committee for the last 4 years. It's a committee that covers topics that I know are important to all of us, particularly important to me in my home state of Arizona. And I would just hope that maybe after today's committee hearing, we might be able to get back together in a setting and kind of talk through some of the challenge we may have faced at the beginning of this session, and find a way for us to work collaboratively together, as I think we've enjoyed doing so for the last number of years. I think the work that this committee does is very important. As I said, it's very important to my home state. And I think there are opportunities for us to find compromise and to work together and to do it in a way where we can actually get a lot of really good stuff done. So what I'd like to suggest is that, maybe after today, we spend a little bit of time thinking, how do we work through some of the challenges that we're facing so that we can find a way to move forward together in a collaborative way. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hassan.
Well, I would certainly echo Senator Sinema's sentiments and also associate myself with those of Senator Ossoff. I'm glad we're holding this markup, and I support some of the filed amendments that may be offered today, and I've even co-sponsored one of them as a standalone bill, but we can't jeopardize critical funding for firefighters, and I believe we need to advance this grant reauthorization bill today without attaching other legislation to it. As chair of the Emerging Threats and Spending Oversight Subcommittee, I'll always work to ensure that firefighters have the resources and equipment that they need to protect the health and safety of our communities, and that is what this bill is about. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hassan. Senator Paul.
Amendment 1. There are more than one perspective. One perspective is we should never put any amendments on it because we can go through easily without amendments. But we also wind up with a $31 trillion debt that we face because we never really reform anything. So, one of the amendments, the one that I'll offer first, is to have a duplicate scoring. A few years ago, I remember somebody came up with some sort of new government housing program, and someone happened to look and see how many we had, and they had like 82 programs already. A lot of these are well-intended and well-meaning, and people say, oh, well, we just want to help people, and so they have a bill to help people, but they don't look and see that we've already got 82 bills already doing the same thing. We never go back and reevaluate whether any of the programs are working or try to fix any things we do. We just add more. And so, this First Amendment would direct the Government Accounting Office to analyze legislation reported by any congressional committee and provide a report to Congress whether the legislation would create a duplicative program, office, or initiative. Over the past 12 years, GAO has documented more than 1,100 cases of duplicative programs. But have we done anything about it? No, because everybody says it's not the time. It's not the place, young man. We're going to do this on another bill. We'll do it a freestanding bill, which never happens. So the other perspective that I bring to this committee is put it on something that is popular, it's going to pass, and you'll finally get something done that would actually help some of our spending problems and the duplicate spending problems. But by always being afraid to amend any bill saying it'll slow things down, this bill has a great deal of popularity, and this bill is going to pass no matter what you put on it. That's the reason to put something good on it that would actually reform things. With regard to whether or not fire departments will quit putting out fires tomorrow if they don't get this, the statistics show that it's like 95% of the fire departments in every community and every locality are provided for by local taxes, as they always were historically, till we forgot about the 10th Amendment and began doing things like this at the federal level. But nobody's closing their fire department down because of this. This program also doesn't expire for another year. If we were to do this duplication report by adopting GAO's recommendations, agencies could have saved the taxpayers over $500 billion. My amendment would prevent duplicative programs from happening in the first place. This is a bipartisan bill, co-sponsored by a member of this committee and passed out of this committee by voice vote in the last Congress. It's not controversial and ought to be able to pass. People say separate them. If you separate them, somebody's going to object, and this one won't pass unanimously. But if it's attached to the fire, if you really like this bill and it's attached to this fire grant program, it will pass. So the argument doesn't hold water. They're going to wait for another time. Waiting for another time basically kills this bill. Putting it on this bill actually allows it to pass. I appreciate the chairman's past support for this measure and others on the committee, and I hope they will do the right thing and actually try to get this bill passed today.
Senator Paul, just to remind folks on the committee, the Senate Bill 559 authorizes appropriations for critical fire prevention, control, and recovery programs. These programs have had long bipartisan support, and the version of this bill was introduced in the 117th Congress and passed by a voice vote out of this committee last year. My staff have certainly had productive conversations with Ranking Member Paul's staff regarding